how much trouble is Mr. Flynn in, and how much trouble can we infer others in the Trump administration or formerly in the Trump administration may be in?
Look, these are, Mr. Flynn has pled guilty to serious felony charges based on the criminal information that was filed today. And as part of that guilty plea, he's clearly agreed to cooperate further. So you have someone who was perhaps during the campaign the most influential and highest ranking person on the campaign handling national security issues, and who actually, and that's when the criminal conduct here occurred, was serving as the national security advisor, the top position in our national security apparatus, is pleading guilty to committing a felony while in that job. So this is very serious. It's historic. And he's the third person now. He's the second person to plead guilty. The other one was also named by then candidate Trump as a key national security advisor. And you have his former campaign manager who is charged and awaiting trial. I'm not sure if you can point to an historical precedent quite like this before. And so the question, I assume, that's ringing out throughout the White House and with others who are concerned about this right now is what's General Flynn saying? What's he cooperating on? And what's the next shoe to fall?
I can tell you're talking quietly because you're on the Acela. I heard that chime. You're on a train. So
right.
I can bust a former FBI agent. How about that, John? So I understand the idea that lying about your recollections, your conversations to an FBI, to the FBI is a serious felony offense. But is there something wrong with the idea that Mr. Flynn was directed to speak to the Russians or spoke to the Russians or spoke to other government officials either while he was working in the campaign or while he was part of the transition apparatus?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts there. One is when someone pleads guilty, they agree to the charges that are in the information. But I don't think we can assume now that we know the full scope of the conduct that led to this guilty plea. In other words, there may be a lot more that's occurred and that he's talking about that's not in the public documents. And on that, we just need to stay tuned.
But can we be very specific about what is in this? In the two-page indictment, plea, etc., it says that what he lied about isn't about talking about ISIS, etc., that he said that he did not ask them to refrain from escalating a situation related to sanctions, and that he doesn't recall the Russian ambassador subsequently telling him that Russia had chosen to moderate its response to the sanctions as a result of his request. I don't know if you remember, if you go back to that time period, it was like, wow, the Russians are behaving really, wow, look at that. This is pretty dramatic. What about those facts? Could those, not that he talked to them, but what he talked about, does it matter?
Yes, I mean, it does. When you look at what happened, the date, December 29th, it's the date that the Obama administration announces new sanctions against Russia and expelled 35 Russian officials, one of the most serious actions that's been taken against spies inside the United States. That's the day that he talks to the key Russian official, Russian ambassador Kislyak, and asks him not to escalate the situation in a way that's contrary to the current sitting president's goals. So, yeah, that's serious. I know there's this report that you're referring to from ABC, and we'll see whether that's true or not. But it would be significant, I think, when you're trying to figure out obstruction, if the president secretly directed Michael Flynn or others to have communications to the Russians, subsequently lied about it, said they didn't do it.
And that is the question, right? Because right now they're getting him on the cover-up. We established that from the first lawyer that we had on the show. Right now he's being prosecuted for the cover-up.
For lying.
But yeah, exactly, for lying. If you assume that these are lesser charges than he would have otherwise faced, right? that's where you start moving up the chain about who else you might get in the White House. Am I understanding that logic or that progress correctly?
If Flynn has credibility.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's one thing to think about. Another thing to think about now is the obstruction of justice, because you have a couple of different factors here. So one is, if you remember the rather stunning testimony of Director Comey about the conversation that he had after the Attorney General was ordered after the room in the Oval Office with the President, where the President asked him essentially to drop the Flynn investigation. So, and subsequently, Director Comey does not drop the investigation and gets fired. So the question is, when you're looking at obstruction, is, okay, it might be legal to fire him, but was there a corrupt intent? Was he fired in order to impede an investigation? So if it turns out to be true that Flynn's prepared to say that Trump knew about the conversations with Russia and therefore knew that he had lied about them or may have directed them, then that would be significant in trying to figure out this corrupt intent. And if you could prosecute a sitting president, and that's a question I think debated by legal scholars, then that could be a criminal charge in the criminal court system. Otherwise, it could be a basis to refer articles of impeachment. So that's something to watch in the days ahead.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.